Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's session on Mastering AI for Marketing. So my name is Charles Clark. I'm really thrilled to be joined by our Head of Engineering, Andy Baird. I thought Andy would be a particularly great guest today because he has led our AI efforts and knows a lot more about it than anyone else at Boma. So Andy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Very welcome. Looking forward to it.
Fantastic. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, as it were, I thought it was worth just spending 30 seconds to maybe put you all at ease, or at least let you know where you sit amongst your peers. So one of the questions we asked was, where do you feel your experiences with AI for marketing out of 5? A good 31% of you said maybe 1 out of 5, really, not sure how to get started, not sure. I have had time to learn, not knowing enough, but then equally we had people at the higher end of the spectrum. So surprising, 44% actually said, 3 out of 5. So getting going, maybe looking to master creation of prompts, definitely some questions around content and how to make sure that that's done effectively, not regurgitated, and definitely how to use it more effectively. And look, and then we even had some of you, 25% who were rating themselves 4 or higher out of 5. So if that's you, really fantastic. And hopefully, if you've got questions, we can answer them, or equally, if you've had experiences as we go and you'd like to comment, welcome that as well. So Andy, do you want to just talk through some of the questions we had?
Yeah, so we got like a really wide range of questions from you guys. Now, obviously, we're not going to run through every single question one by one. There's a lot of double ups as well. So what we've got here on the screen is like the main themes that they followed. So everything from getting started to the security. Prompts was a big one that a lot of people were interested in, also image creation as well, and obviously how to use it in Boma itself. So we'll answer all of them as we go through the webinar, both here in the slides and also on the product demo that we're going to do a little bit later on. But yeah, I mean, that gives you a flavor of the sort of things we'll be covering in the webinar. Given there's a whole bunch of you on one, I think let's jump straight into, what is generative AI? What does it mean? Now, AI has been around for a long time, decades in fact, but the current AI that's kind of got everyone talking is generative AI, which refers to computer algorithms that can effectively simulate human cognitive processes. So that's kind of like learning, decision making, problem solving, and particularly in terms of large language models, which we've got currently, and in fact the ones that generate art as well. It's kind of like they're almost like a silicon brain. So it's this last and kind of perhaps most human quality of generative AI, where you can ask it for something and it can generate it, whether it's like, hey, write me this article, write me this email, write me this blog post, or create this image. And Charles has got a great image that he'll show you later on that he generated specifically for this webinar. It's a lot of fun. And I mean, I guess the thing is, the way that this works is actually quite counterintuitive. So essentially what they do is they train these models. And the way that they train these models is they give them lots and lots of data. So that could be websites on the internet. It could be scientific papers. It could be internal documentation. It could be, like a lot of the, models have sizes, like whether or not you can run it on a phone or not depends on the size of the model. And most of the larger models, you couldn't run it on a phone. You could run it on a laptop, or obviously like one of the supercomputers that you can get from NVIDIA. But the models that are smaller, that will fit on your phone, they're actually trained on less data but higher quality data. And the way that it actually works is they understand probability. And so when you're asking AI to generate like text, you'll actually watch it, like do a word at a time or bunches of words at a time. And actually that is its brain working, kind of going, oh, what's this person asked me about? What have they asked me to speak about? And I'm going to, predict what word I think is going to come next. And so that's sort of really interesting, because it means that it's really good at like generating images or generating words or text, but it's actually not good at things that computers have classically been good at. So if you ask ChatGPT to do some maths, as a couple of colleagues have done today with me, you'll find out that it will generally fall flat on its face, like telling you there's the wrong number of letters in the word strawberry, for example. And that's because it's predictive, like it's trying to statistically go, oh, what do I think the answer is going to be? So it wouldn't actually add up numbers. And I think the last point before we move on to, generative AI and marketing is, as I already mentioned, generative AI is trained on content or data. And a lot of the tools, such as like if you're using ChatGPT, just the free version on their website, they are actually licensed to use any data that you put in there. So if you're just asking it, random questions like, oh, write me an article about Lucy getting a new dog or something, that's fairly harmless. It doesn't matter. But let's say that you're taking some of your company's proprietary data, or maybe one of your clients is taking proprietary data and putting it into an AI system. They can then use that for training, depending on the terms and conditions. Now, inside of Boma, we do actually use ChatGPT under the hood, but we use it through their API or programming interface, which essentially means that we can control how they use that data, and they can't use it for training. So any data that you put inside of Boma is kept private. Obviously, for legal controls and stuff like that, they have to keep it for 30 days, but they don't have access to it. They don't use it for training. There is logging, so don't put anything dodgy in there. But you can be assured that your data is safe. And it's important when you're using any tool to understand, what's the risk here? What data am I putting in here? But I think that's enough about the background of generative AI. Charles, why don't you talk about how it can be used for marketing?
Yeah, and look, it's actually relatively simple in terms of what most people use it for. And I suppose the clue is in the first part of the name, generative. So thinking about what it can generate. So it's great at generating text. You get some interesting results asking it to generate images. And it's even starting to go moving into the video space. You can ask it to generate that sort of content as well. Now, the nice thing here is that, ideally, you can start to use it to do things that maybe you don't have time for yourself, and sort of use it as a plus, as a tool within your firm. But there are obviously some things that come along with a new technology like generative AI. So it is fantastic, but be aware that we are obviously sort of at the sort of the dawn of it. And it is really powerful, but it is not infallible, and it can make errors. So sort of some things to be aware of. And this isn't an exhaustive list. There are lots of other things, but they weren't sort of as important to sort of the context of today's conversation. But in terms of the limitations, I think these are going to be the most relevant to you in terms of how you're thinking to use it, especially in marketing. So a couple of things that I would be thinking about, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with this one, would be around potential for inaccuracies. So AI is, as Andy said, it looks for patterns and sort of tries to sort of think what the next word might be or should be. And it's very good at sounding very authoritative in the information that it pulls together. That doesn't always translate to actually being factually correct. So it's quite happy to actually go and generate something that is partially or wholly inaccurate, but it sounds great. And there's a bit of a theme here in terms of, if you ask it to do something very complex with a lot of statistics and sort of data points or information points, maybe around policies or regulatory updates, that's where it can really start to just make things up, versus, as Andy will sort of show you later on, a more simple, straightforward request, maybe to sort of to do an email alert or something like that. So yeah, so definitely it can produce errors, and so always, something that you need to have a human checking it before sharing. Another thing to think about is that it doesn't actually necessarily know, it doesn't have the context of how you're using it. So it can, as a result, have inconsistencies. So definitely, again, you can give it as much information as you possibly can, and Andy will cover that in terms of AI prompts. But again, the contextual understanding at the moment, because it's generative AI, and Andy will talk about maybe what this might lead to in the future, it doesn't have the ability to have a contextual understanding, and definitely the sort of the difference, know the difference between right and wrong. Now, in terms of some of the other ones, so bias and repetition are two I think are definitely be well worth being aware of. And I think if you've ever come across something which you know is generated by AI, and this might be because you've done it or you've sort of seen an example of it, you probably will get a feeling for the fact that it is, because it reads in a certain way, and it can be verbose, it can repeat certain phrases or words, and it just doesn't quite seem to be written by, or as a human would. So again, that's just sort of something to check for. Now, the last thing, I suppose, in terms of ethical use, and Andy's obviously quickly talked about sort of legal and sort of security elements. I'm going to sort of talk about the ethical use, and this very quickly is a newly developed perspective from a lot of big companies out there, and a lot of big brands, big global sort of companies are using it, but they're also aware of the fact that, is it truthful to be using it? And this isn't a case where it's used 100% to say to create some content or an ad, and then not let the reader know that this was actually created entirely by AI. So there are sort of some advertising standards and sort of conversations going around where they sort of say, look, you actually should indicate that it is AI generated. And the closest example, sort of current example or sort of connection to this would be a sponsored post on Instagram or TikTok where, say, Kim Kardashian is talking about a particular perfume or sort of clothing brand she loves, and she would have to say that it's a sponsored post. So again, it's just the ethical use. Now, as soon as you take some AI generated content and you customize it, you put your own spin on it, you sort of take it from the post and then you sort of make it your own, then you move beyond that, and then you don't sort of need to have that same sort of concern. But again, if it's just purely AI generated, then there is that to consider as well. So I think the main thing for marketing is that it's really powerful, but you really do need to keep an eye on its outputs, and you have to refine them both for readability, but also for accuracy, and to make sure that it is actually telling the truth, or the information conveyed is truthful. So in terms of marketing use cases for AI, like what is it good for? Loads and loads of things. And the first one is around brainstorming topic ideas. So you might be having trouble thinking about some ideas about what it would be good to write for. You can actually go to, say, ChatGPT, and you can ask it to give you some ideas. You could say, look, I'm an accounting firm. We are, these are our client base. We're based here. Can you give me some ideas for what we could write, in terms of blogs or social posts that might be relevant to a sort of specific clients? And then obviously you take those ideas and you could go out, and obviously you could do the writing yourself, or you could actually say, okay, now you've given me some ideas. I like, one or two of them. I would like you to write me an outline of exactly what, what a blog or a longer social post about that would be. So again, this is sort of overcoming the writer's block, or it might be just that you're really short of time. You could say, look, give me a few hundred words kind of outlining in more detail what this would cover, like this blog would cover on this topic. Give me some paragraph headings, and once it's done that, you could then sort of take it and finesse it, and again, sort of that customization, making it your own. It's also really good for proofreading the current material. And so if anyone is familiar with Grammarly, that's one that's been around for a little while, and that will actually go through and suggest changes not only to your spelling, but also your grammar. And I think, with their AI, you can sort of ask it to sort of proofread and say, look, actually this sentence, if you slightly reworded it or reconstructed it, it would make more sense. So great for proofreading maybe material that you have written or a colleague has written. You can pop it in and it will come out and proof it for you. What you could also do is actually ask it, you give it some material you have, and you could say, look, rewrite it, but change the tone. or change, make it more engaging, or make it more formal. So there's lots of interesting things that you can do where it will actually then go through and say, great, to make this more formal, I'm going to change, the language around sort of some key words, but keep the majority of the content in terms of the context that you had. That will sort of be kept the same. And where it really excels is that sort of non-technical content. So Andy will show you some examples of this. But as I said, it could be a short email, it could be a social post, or a sort of a simple blog. And the reason here is that the more complex the task that you give it, especially if it's sort of, it has to cover 4 or 5 things, and each has a layer of complexity. There can be sort of a cognitive dissonance where it starts to sort of, in the first little bit, 1 or 2 things are wrong in the first little sort of section that it writes, but those sort of mistakes start to sort of magnify throughout a longer form post, especially if it's technical and going, across different topics with, stats, information, things like that. So again, if you keep it non-technical, keep it short and simple, that's really where it excels. Again, at this point, maybe in the future, this will change, but right now, this is a strong suit for it. So, and a lot of this really comes down to prompts best practice, and this was a great question that we, a lot of you were wondering, how do I give it that context? How do I give it those instructions?
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. So first off, obviously the quality of the output is very much tied to the quality of your input. And so being able to use generative AI effectively really relies on using good prompts. So that's about crafting, refining your prompts, and making it specific and tailored to your business and your specific circumstance. Now, I guess the big thing here as well is you don't have to start from scratch every time. So I've just got like a document where I put my prompts in, I keep a copy of them so I can refer back to them. So, ideally, you're never starting from scratch. You're taking a prompt that you've used before, you're reusing it, you might be tweaking it slightly. One of the things that it's very good for is writing like an announcement for an event or something like that. And you can use the same prompt for multiple events. It's just you give it some extra details of like, hey, this event is about this, and this is where it is, and this is what time it is. And so it's just kind of, it becomes a fill in the blank. You ask it to write a long email and it will write one for you. And the more detail that you can provide, the better. You want to explain your goal, you want to explain your desired outcome, and you want to provide, data or links like dates for an event, like I was just talking about, so that would help the AI respond. Also, if you think about large language models, they're trained on wide swathes of data, and they don't know anything about you. They don't know anything about your organization. They don't know anything about your clients. So anything that can help them understand, like the fact that you're an accountant, the types of industries that you work for, who are your clients? Are they retailers? Are they cafes? Are they hotels? Are they other professionals? And so giving them an idea of like who your brand is, who you deal with, who they buy, who buys from you, information about the products or service that you might want to draw attention to in the content that it's writing, then anything like that is useful to get the AI to go, okay, cool, I understand what I'm being asked to do here. And, ask specific questions, so like if we were trying to brainstorm, as Charles was mentioning earlier, we wouldn't just go, hey, what should I do for my next marketing campaign? Like if you ask a generic question, it's going to give you a very generic, very basic answer. So it's far more, it's far more likely to give you a great answer if you say, hey, I'm a small accountant. I'm writing an email specifically for my retailer clients. They're based in small towns south of London, and they have these sorts of challenges right now. What sort of email campaign would work best to help these clients out? And so straight away, you've kind of given it a location, you've given it a type of business that you're aiming for, and probably you'd add a bit in there as well about like who you are. Equally, you want to try out different approaches, and we've found this a lot with our testing of AI. Sometimes you ask something, sometimes you say something, and the AI just completely doesn't get it. And it's like sometimes when you're dealing with people, they completely don't understand, what you're talking about. So it's important to try different contexts. It's important to try different words. Like we found that summarize sometimes worked and sometimes didn't. But if you ask it to write a shorter version of something, it understands that, or a specific length. And so sometimes it's just about being more specific rather than more, generic, obviously. Equally, you can, I'll sometimes just hit the try again button with the content assist in Boma, but also you can give it feedback. You can say, hey, look, please write that again, but use a more professional tone. Or, if you could rewrite that, targeting it for a, middle-aged female chief executive who is, interested in increasing the bottom line of their business, whatever it might be, something that gives them a clue, or the AI a clue, not a person, obviously. But it is interesting. Like AI literally is like a silicon brain. It's quite a strange technology. It's not like your classic ones and zeros. It's much more like a silicon brain that knows about probability, and like, oh, you've asked me about cats, and I'll put some words together that talk about cats. And that's why the last one is super, super crucial. Verify the AI response. You want to always double check the accuracy of the response. Synthetic intelligence, unfortunately, isn't perfect yet, and mistakes can happen. There are, obviously all the AI companies are working on what's called AGI, which is essentially around advanced general intelligence. So that's about these tools being able to know, hey, am I telling you something factual, or am I telling you a lie? Can I fact check myself? And in fact, some of them are starting to, they'll get, like the tool might generate some text. Gemini is working on this at the moment. I think it's in beta, so I don't think you can get it in public right now. But essentially, when it generates you some text, it actually has links down the bottom. It says, hey, this is where this is where I got this from. You can check and double check like where I've sourced this information from. You can make sure that it's factual. And then there's other AI tools where they actually have like fact checkers that run over it and kind of go, wait, do we have checks and balances to make sure that this is true? But most tools right now don't have that. AGI is still a while away. And so it is about just always sanity checking it and going, hey, is this right? And even beyond is it correct? Does it make sense? As Charles has already mentioned, you want to make sure that you are customizing it, making it true to your brand, your voice, and making sure that it sounds like you and not automated generated content. So I think that is enough talking. I think let's get into Content Assist inside of Boma. So I will share my screen. Give me one moment. Cool. There we go. For those of you, I think pretty much everyone on here is a Boma user, but for anyone who's watching the replay that isn't a Boma user, this is the front page of Boma. We can see I've got like some content libraries here, got my campaigns down here. We can see that I've got some premium libraries from The Gap and Wolters Kluwer. And then, unfortunately, Wolters Kluwer not currently available in the UK. Australia and New Zealand, we do have it. The Gap is available globally, so that is available in the UK. And if I jump into the content library, obviously we can see all of the content in here. Be aware that you can choose libraries on the left. So if you are a Gap member, you can choose the Gap and just see only the Gap content. Also, it's worth pointing out that you can limit by a specific category. So I think a lot of people just come in the library and just start scrolling, but it's far more effective to go, hey, look, I'm going to look at all libraries and I'm going to look at management and strategy, or I'm going to search for, office and find everything that's related to offices. And so it's a good idea to play around with the search and not build everything just by scrolling the wheel. But what I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to create a campaign from scratch using Content Assist. So I'm going to choose branded web page. So this is going to create a branded web page inside of Boma. Now, equally, you can share this as is from Boma, but what a lot of users will do is they'll take it and they'll use it on their blog, on their website, so that when you're sharing it, you're sharing a link back to your website, and you're welcome to do it either way. So what I'm going to do is I know what I'm going to write about. I'm going to get AI, Content Assist, to write about 3 ways to increase sales. So I put that in now so that preloads in here. I'm going to click Edit Article. That's going to load. the web page editor, which I can see up the top here, because obviously the email editor and the email editor look very similar. But if you look at the top, you'll always see whether you are editing an email or a web page. We'll get to this image in a minute, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to click this Write with AI. So basically, when you click on a paragraph or a headline, you'll get this Write with AI option on the right. When we click it, we can then do some automatic ones. So some of the things like correct grammar, as Charles was talking about earlier, or translate it, or make it a specific tone. But in this case, I'm going to paste in a prompt, obviously, that I've created earlier. So I'm telling ChatGPT, hey, you're an expert marketer and salesperson. Write me a 500-word article in British English on the 3 best ways to grow the sales in your small business. So obviously, we don't want Americanized words. And so we're going to tell ChatGPT that. So it's going to have a think about it. It's going to write me an article, and then I can decide if I like it, if I don't like it. If I don't like it, I can click regenerate, ask it to do it again. Let's have a look, see what it said. As an expert marketer and salesperson, focusing on strong customer relationships. That's good. Leveraging digital marketing, strategic pricing strategies, driving sales. Okay, nice. Yeah, I like that. So I'm going to apply that. But equally, I could run it again, or I could write a slightly different query. And this is an article, so I don't need to customize this with like dear first name or anything like that. But I'm going to change this introduction. Here's some valuable insights on the 3 best strategies to boost sales in your small business. And I'm going to take that bit there because I want to use that in the introduction outside. And maybe, actually, I'm going to leave that in. And maybe it says read more on our website, and I might actually change this link. So rather than being my website, it might go to a contact us page, or it might go to a follow-up article or an opt-in, like to get them to opt into your database. So great. So I'm going to save that. And obviously that's going to save that article. I forgot to do the image. I'll jump back in and do that. So obviously because I haven't done the image, it won't update it. So it's updating the image that does it so that it brings it through to the social. So I'll do that now. So I'm going to click change image. And obviously you can search free photos. I can reuse a photo that I've done earlier. I did use the Bing image creator to generate me some. So person processing a sale in a retail store. Obviously these are all very generic, very stock. I could download one of these. I then decided that I didn't like these very much, so I jumped into Midjourney and generated a bunch of images. So, here's some retail stores. These are quite nice, bit more detailed. We will be sending out a list of tools that you can use for generating these. And what you can do is, like, I liked this one. Then I said, hey, generate me some variations on that one. And then actually I went back to the first ones again and then, did actually a new one. So collect processing order a till in a retail store. And I might decide, yeah, I like this one. I'm going to download this one. And then that's going to download. And then I can jump back in here and go upload and choose that photo, upload it, and put it against it. So I mean, this is one of the most common ways that marketers are using AIs. Obviously, they're using it to write emails, but a lot of people are using it for images because you just have that flexibility to actually ask for exactly what you want. And equally, like with a lot of them, you can actually like highlight sections and you can actually say, hey, change this or change that. So it gives you a lot of options, like if you wanted, perhaps you wanted like your brand colors in there. So maybe you get it to generate it with your brand colors. And again, I'm going to copy and paste this bit here. I'm going to save and close this. And so now that's going to update that image. Fantastic. And I'm going to change the post content so that here's some valuable insights and great sales creation any business. Great. Now I could continue this and I will continue this, but if you wanted to, you could just copy the text out of that article. You could take it to your blog and post it there if that's where you're going to share it from. And what I'm going to do now is we're actually going to jump into an email. I'm going to select a template. Now, equally, I could use the full article. So I could use that article and send it out just as an email if I wanted to send a more detailed one to clients. But in this case, I'm going to use the intro plus hero. This is one of our more popular content templates because it works really well. It's really easy to format, works the same on, it looks the same by default on desktop and mobile, so you know exactly what it's going to look like. You're not kind of guessing. So I'm going to create a bit of a newsletter email, So I'm going to add some content from the content library, but equally that could be from my website, could be from, HMRC, I think it is in the UK. And, it could be from anywhere. It could be an article, a news article. In this case, I'm going to search for something based on tax because I've still got that ratio measures. Great. So I'm going to like that. Maybe I'm going to preview the content first. I'm going to check it. Liquidity ratios, current ratio, Solvius ratios. Okay, cool. Yep, I like that piece of content. I'm going to select that. Going to bring that in. Again, I'm going to use that same hero format, and that's going to come in. And if I wanted to, rewrite some of these, then I could click on these, and again, I could go, hey, make it tone without changing the format. So maybe I want it more professional without changing the format, and then I can ask it to do that. It'll do it. Okay, for effective analysis and decision making. Okay, maybe I don't like that. Maybe I click regenerate, get it to try on something else. Informed decision making. Okay, cool. That's nice. And there we go. I've got a new headline. Maybe I don't want a full stop in there. I'll just remove that. And obviously, because this is an email, good idea to customize it. So we'll drag in that dear first name, and obviously I would customize this text if I was sending it out. And I'd also, drag in my name and my footer and that sort of stuff as well. Yeah, I think that was everything in the demo. Was there anything else, Charles, that we wanted to cover off? I think we've done images.
Talk about customizing current content. Look, if anyone has any questions, I think we'll continue on with the rest of it. But if you've got questions, if we've left anything out that you'd like to see, just pop it into the chat or the Q&A. We can always dive back in here afterwards, or we can obviously just keep on. We can just answer them live. For those of you who are Boma users, if you haven't given Content Assist, that's what we call the ChatGPT inside Boma a go. Definitely go and give it a try. You can customize content library articles. For example, you can change the tone. You can ask it to summarize, as Andy said. We even had people over in Australia who actually get it to translate it into another language. In this particular case, it was a client had a lot of English speaking, but also Mandarin speaking clients. So she sent out one Mandarin language one, which was translated from the English version. Now, the great thing, as Andy said, well, two things with the ChatGPT version inside of Boma. One is that you're saving basically 20 US a month for the version that we're providing you. And secondly, as Andy said, there's great privacy through the API that's SOC 2 and SOC 3 compliant. Andy, did you want to sort of add any more details on those?
Yeah, I mean, basically, so SOC 2 and SOC 3 means that not only are there cloud and data security controls like up to that level, they also have to be inspected and verified as well. So independent CPA firms have to make sure that they're not just saying they're doing the right thing, they are actually doing the right thing. So that actually gets verified and audited, that they are doing what they say they're doing with the data. So they can't get around that. So yeah, so you can rest assured that obviously with that SOC 2 and SOC 3 compliant API, everything that you're putting in there is protected. So yeah, it's great.
Now, one of the obviously this is the image that Andy was referring to. I had a bit of fun earlier trying to think up kind of a bit of a ridiculous image to sort of see what what can be generated. And so I've got it on this page because this page is really about, for those of you who are interested in getting started, where does one start? I think it's good to sort of just put yourself into the position of having an AI mindset. Now, plenty of people definitely early on, maybe sort of a year and a bit ago, were saying, look, it might be a fad, but we now know that there have been, multi-hundreds of billions invested in AI, generative AI, by all the big sort of tech firms around the world. So it definitely is not going anywhere. And in fact, it's just going to become more and more part of, a business and I suppose the ecosystem that we all use, like all the other apps that we use and now take for granted within our businesses. A generative AI is sort of going to, obviously become more and more important. So in terms of that sort of AI mindset, if you can sort of approach it with that mindset of it a useful tool rather than threat. And the reason I sort of call it a tool is because like with any tool, you need to learn how to use it. And the analogy here, I think, would be maybe of, the first time that a child saw a pencil or a pen. If they picked it up the first time and they might try to write with it, so they've probably seen their parents or sort of maybe a teacher do it, and they wouldn't be able to do it. And they might sort of be like, oh, it's no good, it's stupid, there's no sort of point continuing. But, as we all know, we obviously encourage them and teach them how to use it because it's an incredibly useful skill to have. And, being able to use generative AI is much the same. It's just something that we do need to think positively about, and we do need to sort of incorporate it in our day-to-day. And the benefit there is that really, it doesn't have to be sort of all-consuming, but there's a lot of ways where it can save time. And we're only, talking about it from a sort of particularly marketing focused perspective here, but there are AI for sort of managing your calendars. There are lots of other types of AI which definitely you want to be sort of thinking about, or you may already have within your firm. And I definitely know there are a lot of other accounting apps which are putting AI specifically for reviewing data and sort of coming up with insights that maybe, in the past we've had to do manually. Another good way to think about it is, as the world's smartest intern. So, no matter how smart a new intern might be, if this was actually a real intern, they possibly have no experience working in a new firm. So if you think about how you might instruct them to do something, you would sort of give them a very detailed set of instructions, what it is that you're wanting them to do, how they should do it, what the outcome is that you're looking for. And if you recorded that 100 words or 150 words to give them all the instructions they needed, and then you actually use that as a prompt for your AI, that's probably going to be kind of an effective way to think about it. And it's kind of the opposite of how we used to sort of troll the internet with likes of Google. In fact, with Google, the less information you could sort of give it, the better. So best accountant in Wiltshire or something like that. Whereas actually generative AI, the more information you give it, the better, the more detail, the better. And as Andy said, you can even give it the role prompting. So, pretend that you are a marketing manager for a specific firm, targeting these sorts of clients with these sorts of outcomes in mind. So once you sort of got that mindset, think of it as a smartest intern. It's all really about practicing and learning as you go, seeing what works for you, what sorts of prompts gives you the outcomes that you're looking for. And as Andy said, in his case, he keeps a prompt library, and we've also got a bit of a prompt library in Boma, all around generating content and emails and blogs and things like that. Same goes for image generation. So I sort of thought, what would be a particularly sort of odd and strange image? Why don't I ask it for a trout chasing a mountain biker down a snowy mountain? And look, this is what it came up with. So the nice thing with imagery and these image generators is that you can have a bit of fun with it, and you will find that some of your prompts give you what you want and maybe others don't. But again, it's important to have a go and try. And the nice thing is there are a variety of solutions out there. So it's not just OpenAI AI's ChatGPT. There are lots and lots of big generative AI models out there. I've listed a few, like some Google Gemini, Microsoft's Copilot and Bing, Claude, and they will all give you slightly different outputs because they've all been trained on different, maybe potentially different information, but also the sort of the black box inside them, the sort of the brain. We don't know what's in there, so there might be different, they might be put together in a slightly different way. So you might actually find that you could give the same exact prompt to ChatGPT, Gemini, and Copilot, and you would probably get subtly, or maybe not so subtly, different outcomes as a response. The nice thing with that, with a lot of these is that they are free, or they have free versions to try. So you could actually go and try 2 or 3 of them, find the one or maybe the 2 that you like the most. And if you then consider it worth it, you could actually then move on to their paid plans. Now, the difference between their free versions and the paid versions is that obviously, like sort of with everything, you get what you pay for, in this case, what you don't pay for. So the free versions, there will be a limit on the amount of requests that you can make of it, whether that's content or imagery. And sometimes the model won't be the most up to date. So the information on it might be older, or it just might not be as advanced. So again, if you find a particular one that you like, you decide to then go and invest, $20, $30 to sort of get the latest version, you will obviously notice a difference in the output that you get from it. Andy, anything to add at this point in terms of the different options out there for people?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only other thing worth mentioning now, I've only seen this from like a technical viewpoint, but there are sort of like aggregator tools starting to spring up now, mostly for API use, so not necessarily for for our clients, for accountants, but where essentially you go to like it's a bit like it's almost like a super AI or like a Google AI, where essentially you're asking it a question and under the hood it actually has a like a router that essentially goes, oh, you've asked me a question about X or Y or Z, or you've asked for a response that looks like this, and so therefore I'm going to route this question in a particular way because of the question that you've asked. And basically the advantage of that is based on your question, it will choose the cheapest, fastest engine to do that. So if you're asking for something very basic, it might go, I'll just use an old, Chat GPT 3.5 for that very basic query. Oh, you're asking for something more detailed, very, specifically formatted writing, or maybe you want it to be more verbose. Okay, I'll send that to Claude. Or maybe I want something that, isn't quite AGI, but has a better, like error checking, accuracy checking feature. So I'm going to send it to that one. So, like I said, I haven't seen them available yet as consumer products, but I think those consumer products won't be far away. So that will be quite nice, because instead of you having to guess, I need X, do I ask this, this AI, or this AI? And yeah, you can have the AI do that for you as well. So yeah, I think that'll be quite nice once that becomes further available.
Now, for any of you who aren't on Boma, and I'll keep this very short, you can trial it free for 14 days. Comes with onboarding and training complimentary on, for the life of your account. Obviously includes Content Assist AI, and he's mentioned the content libraries, but obviously comes with website integrations along with Zapper integrations to the likes of QuickBooks and other key practice apps, as well as a CRM, and it starts from £49 per month. Now, I'm not sure if we've had any questions, but if you do have any questions at this point about anything that we have covered, we do have just another minute or two. We're very happy to take any questions that you might have. Andy, just while we wait to see
I was going to say, while we wait, I've actually got, so one of the things that I didn't demo, because I just went back through my notes, was the Christmas email, which is
great.
quite a nice one and quite a timely one while we're waiting for that question. So let me just find the prompt. Here it is here. So obviously, again, this is a saved prompt, but so I can drag in just like an empty paragraph here. I can click on the paragraph, click on Write with AI, and then I'm going to say, hey, pretend you're an accountant, write an email wishing your clients a happy Christmas and New Year's break, thank them for their business and loyalty, mention the firm is closed, and obviously we've got the specific close dates in there, and then the email, and again, use British English and make it at least so long. And so effectively, and this is the sort of great prompt that you can have. You could use this for any holiday any holiday period. So it could be for the summer holidays, could be for the Christmas holidays, could be for a long bank holiday, long weekend, or whatever. So, and obviously, yeah, so I like that. Firm, festive time of the year, reflecting the achievements and milestones. Okay, great. Yep, I like the look of this. Obviously, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to customize it with a merge tag. So I'm going to put the first name in there. Say dear first name, and I'm not going to say as an accountant. That's an odd way to start. I'd like to have this opportunity to wish all our valued clients a very happy Christmas, prosperous New Year. For us, it'd be greatly appreciated. Yeah, perfect. Okay, cool. And obviously, if I was doing this properly, I'd go through and edit this like very, very tightly. The only other thing that I will do is here's an email address, so I will turn this into a link so that if they want to send an email, it's nice and easy for them. So there's the email. And the subject can be support, and we'll go okay, and then that will turn that into an email link for them. Yeah, and so I mean, I think that's the only other thing I had on my list. Do we have any questions, Charles?
I can't see any at the moment. So I think in the interest of time, I will just wrap up now. So thank you everyone for joining us this morning. We'll send out the recording tomorrow along with links to some of the main engines, and you can also use them for imagery generation as well. If you've got any questions, feel free to reply to that email. That'll come through to our support team. So whether they're about Boma, Content Assistant Boma, or any other questions you may have, very happy to help. So Andy, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks everyone for attending, and we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, thanks very much. And thanks, Sean. Thanks, Andy. Thanks for the feedback. Much appreciated. Have a great day, everyone.